Hello, everyone. My name is Phil, and I'm a doctor who likes to play board games. Today's video is my top 10 most anticipated board games for 2026. I typically have not done this type of list in the past because I felt like I haven't had enough interest in the games that have been announced around this time of year to make such a video, and I'm still catching up on the anticipated games from the end of the previous year. But I think I have enough to make a list now thanks to crowdfunding campaigns slated to come out this year, announcements that have been made so far about games, and of course to many of the content creators who have done their research to make it easier for people, including me, to know what's planned in the near future. The rules that I made for myself for this video are that the games listed are currently marked as 2026, and those games on Board Game Geek, and those games are eligible for this list. And recently, have been some games, right, like the Danes that I've talked about before, that has now been moved to 2027. It's bound to happen to other games, whether they're on this list or not. And so I'm going to be talking about these games as they are now, at the time of the recording, slated for 2026, but it's bound to change and subject to. Second, games that are new or special editions of pre existing games or expansions are also left out of this list. So, sorry to Agricola Special Edition, which I'm very much excited for this year. Finally, the order I'm listing in these games is going to be different than usual. Instead of leaving my most anticipated game for the last pick, I'm ordering it from how much I know about the game to the least amount, and so it's in descending order from the most knowledge to the least. I think this way I can talk about games I assume most of us know a lot about first, and maybe leave some of the more speculative games and maybe perhaps more hidden gem slash hyped games, or at least more interesting games that are newly announced to the later picks. So, with that, let's get into the list. The first game is Brass Pittsburgh. Thanks to many developer updates through GameFound, we know a lot about the next standalone game in the system of Brass Games. The Kickstarting campaign launches in a few days at the time of this recording, and Brass Birmingham is in my top 100 games of all time, and I'm excited to see the new map, the variations they're making to various buildings, uh, having different buildings to build a decentralized market, the concept of heavy trains, whiskey as a resource instead of beer, and other changes and additions that they're making, including the two-player map. From what I can see, I'm excited to hear about the experience that playtesters have had with Pittsburgh. It seems that they've really stayed true to the thematic area and time period that they're trying to portray in this game, while still holding on to the elegant systems that make Brass such a fantastic game. And so I'm super excited for Pittsburgh this year. Next is another Martin Wallace game, and that's Casus Belli. This is a game that I played last year during the Kickstarter that was made available to try on Tabletop Simulator. Uh, the For full transparency, the Wallace Designs, they asked if they could put that first impressions video on the Kickstarter campaign that you can see as a late pledge, and so I did decide to back the game as well. I really was impressed with this game, as you might be able to tell with the first impressions video. But anyway, this game is a Space 4X game based on an older game of Wallace's, A Handful of Stars, which features kind of some deck building, hand management, as well as an interactive board that you are trying to do 4X space stuff in. You have events every round that shake up the game and add new pieces to the board and new challenges to overcome, in addition to the challenges that you are facing against your opponents. And there are asymmetric factions as well to push your game in different directions. There's just something about this game when I first played it that really spoke to me. It was a really interesting experience mechanically, very highly interactive, while utilizing mechanisms that I was already familiar with. and it seemed like the play length was very manageable compared to other 4X games of this ilk. It was kind of around that time that I tried this game that I was thinking about arcs as well, and I find that there are some similarities there as well. They're, I think, going to be completely different experiences, especially if you play arcs as the campaign with the campaign expansion. But and I should say that I haven't had much of a Space 4X history in board gaming to compare both of these games to. So there's plenty to explore on that front, but I think Casus Belli stands out pretty well on its own as a Wallace design. If you're familiar with a lot of his games, including Brass, this one might, it doesn't feel too similar to Brass, but I think you kind of get some of the vibes that are in those games comparative to Casus Belli. And so I hope that this continues to be a very fun and elegant and strategic experience, Casus Belli. The next game on the list is Stellar Ventures. This one is almost done with its crowdfunding campaign at the time of this recording. I believe there might be some late pledge options available later on. I've been playing a lot more complex, economic, meaty games recently with some of the folks that I have been playing physically in gaming groups, and so this game on the surface kind of fits the mold of those kind of games that I've been experiencing and been talking about on the channel as well. And it's sort of a venture, this game, into a realm that I haven't explored yet, or at least only dipped my toes into, because the way that this game is explained is it's a mixture between a cube rail game and it utilizes some 18xx concepts as well, making it, though, a kind of a combined experience with Euro style mechanisms and, of course, the space theme on top of everything instead of having it be a rail game. So some people who have played it have some good things to say about it. So others don't. They prefer either to have a cube rails game or an 18xx game, and the mixture experiment doesn't work for them. So because of that mixed reception already, I don't know. I'm not head over heels backing this game yet, so I have to try it out first before I decide whether to bring it into my collection or not. But I think it's a really interesting game that might introduce me to some concepts that I think I should experience sooner rather than later when it comes to some rail games, 18xx games, etc. So I'm excited for this game, Stellar Ventures. My next game is Ancient Empires, which is also in crowdfunding right now. I'm a sucker for civilization themed games, and this one has a lot of mechanisms that I find interesting, though. And so it's an interesting approach to the Civ Euro theme. You have programming when you choose your actions. You place these action chips around a board and activate them in order. I don't know. I probably could find out if you activate, like, you place your chips into certain regions and activate them, or if you just basically place your chips in a certain order and activate them anywhere, because you have multiple maps actually that you are interacting on. So it kind of has that like Concordia, terraforming Mars kind of experience with a different map or central board. Age of Steam is another example that you are interacting with, and that might change your strategy and experience. And so, in any case, like, I really think that action selection mechanism is interesting, and I haven't experienced that in a Civ game yet. But it also has other things that I like, where your military might is more of an influence rather than a take that combative experience. So very similar to Seven Wonders and Mosaic. You have tech trees and asymmetric civs to diverge your strategy from, like in games and like games of like Epic and Epochs and Age of Civilization. So it's definitely a game that I want to try out to see if it stands among some of these Civ games that I mentioned and have really enjoyed. And so, yeah, I'm excited to see if this game has something going for itself. My next game is Angel's Share. So this game, I was surprised to see, is by Scott Almes, which I know him for Beer and Bread and Tiny Epic Games. So this one seems to be a more complex economic game. So I wasn't. It was kind of a disparity, I guess, between what Alms has put out before and the look at this game, which is basically a very economic game about brewing spirits. It kind of utilizes a similar mechanism to the unpredictability of what kind of spirit you brew, because some of it evaporates, and that's why it's called an angel's share, because it evaporates up into the heavens, right? This mechanism kind of is implemented in the very popular game Distilled. And so I know that this game in particular will have some competition in the Euro style uh, zeitgeist with this theme in particular. There are now plenty of games that do have a spirit making, wine making, beer, liquor making experience. And so uh, I feel like it thematically, it does have to try to prove itself a little bit more. And in addition to that, some people have some mixed thoughts already online, as this is available where I am in the United States, more available through Capstone Games. And so it will be somewhat, easier for me to try this sooner rather than later. But I do feel like I do need to check it out because I do like Alms and his games, and I'm really interested to see how he tackles a more complex game. The next game on this list is an interesting one, and that's Lands of Evershade. So this is a kind of a complete 180 from what I typically play or talk about on my channel. But to kind of give you some background, in addition to playing board games, which I have already played. I had played a lot of board games growing up, but hadn't really dived, headfirst into the hobby until like 2020. But about 2018, I started playing D&D for the first time with friends and family. Loved it a lot. I even, like, during the pandemic, ran a few campaigns, short campaigns or one-off one-shots myself. Listened to Critical Role. Recently played games like Baldur's Gate 3, so very familiar with D&D and the tabletop role-playing experience. And this game, Lands of Evershade, boasts the opportunity to experience a tabletop role-playing game without a dungeon master to craft the story for you or to react to what you do. The issue that I find with a lot of games, and this also includes more narrative driven games, as a tangent, I recently played Vantage, which I, mechanically do appreciate and respect, but it's not the style of game that I want to come back to over and over again, because a lot of these narrative driven games, or even games that are trying to mirror the experience of D&D, and this applies to Baldur's Gate 3 too. I just feel like I don't have as much freedom as I do, obviously, in a D&D experience. Your imagination is the limit, and there have to be limits in a video game. There have to be limits, supposedly in a board game experience. And so a lot of those games, I feel like, having rules for combat is fine, but like when I want to just really do something outside the box, sometimes I don't feel like I can do that, right? Like I want at least the opportunity to just kind of do whatever I want, and just see what happens. And so if Lands of Evershade can kind of deliver on that front a little bit more than some of the games and experiences that I've had so far, that would be amazing, because that would, obviously save a lot of time for those of us who end up having to plan ahead and prepare campaigns ahead of time. And, if we're really busy, then it might be easier to just pull out the game, let the game itself, react to what you're trying to do, and still retain the level of flexibility and freedom that you get in those kinds of experiences. So that's why this game in particular caught my eye. Seems pretty ambitious. Can't wait to see what happens with this game. And if I get the chance to play it, I'd love to do so. Next is Ringyo. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. This is from Paverson Games, the publishers of Luthier and distilled. So it has a pretty good pedigree of designers and games or and publishing, publishers backing this game. So I will admit that I like Distilled and Luthier, but I feel like they didn't blow me away like a lot of other content creators and just players in general from last year in the last couple of years. I'm hopeful for this game though because I think it's going to be at least a very solid Euro game. But the things that interest me more about this game in particular are the theme of forestry and environmental preservation in feudal Japan. Something I see myself getting into that theme a lot easier and kind of hopefully immersed with the mechanisms that surround the theme. I like the fact that it's a simultaneous worker placement game with some auction and bidding. I wonder if it might be kind of similar to Luthier, but even so, like I've really appreciated auctioning and bidding in recent plays of like Age of Steam. I think it's a really cool mechanism that I want to explore more of. And so if it has that here, great. That would be fantastic. This game will crowdfund hopefully later this year. So I'm looking forward to learning more about this game and hopefully trying it. And so that's Ringyo. The next game is another Scott Alms game. So that's Wine and Cheese, a spiritual successor to Beer and Bread. I don't know much about how this game works. I know it looks like Beer and Bread. It's a two-player game. It doesn't seem like it has a lot of card play behind it. It looks like it's more tile-based. I like the card play. Usually I like card play better than I do tiles, and so I'm hopeful that this will be at least a good experience. Will it be better than Beer and Bread? There's only one way to find out, and so I'm looking forward to trying Wine and Cheese. Next is Viridia. I only know about this game because of the R&R show on Rado's channel where they talked about this a couple of days ago. And the designers behind this game and what was reported to us through, oh, I forgot his name on the R&R show, but the concept of this game intrigued me where it's a city builder that allows you to like build on top of what you've already built. And so very intrigued to see how this city building game is portrayed. I also learned that the concept for this game mechanically was sort of inspired by looking at Arc Nova when it came out about 5 years ago. And so I'm really intrigued to see if this game does follow like Arc Nova pretty closely when it comes to mechanisms, which would be really cool because I love Arc Nova in similar games. So yeah, I'm excited to see and learn more about this game because I and pretty much none of us really know much about this game aside that it's being released by Capstone later on this year. So for my last game, funny enough, I prepared my script, I wrote it, I'm editing the video, and it happens to be that there is more information on this game. So back in late last year, and I let me start over by saying that I am a huge fan of Brandon Sanderson. I have been reading his books before I started playing a lot of board games. And so, as I've seen Brotherwise come out with board games related to the Cosmere, it's been a lot of fun. John DeClaire did Mistborn a couple of years ago. I was at the convention when that was released for the Sanderson convention that he runs every year. And so it was really cool to see. That game didn't, I mean, I have it. It's not a game that I return to very often, but I think it does Mistborn a lot of justice. But Brandon announced that Brotherwise was doing another game, this time set in Roshar and with the Stormlight Archive books, which are my favorite. And I was, super excited. I was hoping that this game would be very epic and very all inclusive with the theme and story. And it turns out that Brotherwise, about a month or so ago, released a video talking a little bit more about this game. So now I know that it's titled War for Roshar. It's focused on the first 5 books. And it is also designed by John DeClaire. Apparently, it has miniatures, it has cards and chits, and all sorts of things, and will be available for Kickstarter in the fall of 2026. So it makes me think that this actually might be a 2027 game, but all, I was planning for this to be available this year. So, you know, who knows what will happen with this game, but it's really cool to get some information as I am recording this, and am super excited to see what this game looks like. And in addition, found out there's another Cosmere game, Shards of Creation. It's a trick taking game that's coming out in May, so we'll add that as an honorable mention as well. That is 10 games that I'm anticipating playing this year. I think that this list is essentially one that says, hey, if I get the chance to play some of these games, and obviously other games will come to me, whether physically or digitally, and I'll get a chance to play them. Ones that have not been announced yet, or even ones that are announced that I just missed or dismissed. But if I had to choose like 10 games to play right now that I would want to play later this year, I think this list kind of fits, and this also goes into addition with the other games that were announced at like ESSA that are coming and releasing later on here in the States. And so, yeah, I'm hopeful to try these games at least once later on this year, and hope that they are fantastic games. But let me know if you have any thoughts about these games, or if there are any games that you think I should try that are anticipated for a 2026 release. Let me know. Apologize for my voice if it sounds a little raspy, just getting over a sickness. But thank you. If so, if you've listened to this thus far, thank you very much. Hope you schedule an appointment with me real soon. I'll catch you on the next one. Take care.